Chapter 36. The Agreements. Had I spent the rest of my life planning and thinking about how this might go, I would never have expected those results. I had planned to tell Kay my true feelings toward her. If she had rejected me, which was more likely to happen, that would have cost us our enduring friendship, and I would have had nothing more left to lose, and to live on Earth then would have become my only consolation, and would have been the most convenient solution. The other possibility was that she appreciated my feelings and turned out to feel the same way about me, which was the case, and I never expected or saw it coming. So my next move was to propose to her, then do my best to persuade her to join me on that non-return escapade to Earth. There we would establish our family and become together the third version of Adam and Eve. Otherwise, I would have to give up this dream and stay by her side because everything I've been through made me realize she was a much better dream to catch. What happened there took me by surprise. While I approached Kay with caution and suspense for fear that she would reject me, she took the initiative as soon as she learned only the first part of my plan. She quickly thought it over, came to grips with all her options and decided. Then she reintroduced herself to me, playing her unexpected role, not just as a best friend or lover, but as a true partner in life. That was the woman I wanted. That was the woman for whom I would surely die as a redemption. Back in the jumper, she called Elo and told him of my intentions. I was not at the time aware of his true feelings for Kay or hers for me. He, on the other hand, was aware of the dilemma. He considered it an opportunity to kill two birds with one stone. So he granted me my wish, and at the same time he took me out of his way in the equation. But he did not realize that he allowed her wit to snare him and be easy prey in the nets of her cunning. After she called him, and while she was still in the jumper, Kay made another call to Ral. Because of her close connection with him and the other high-ranking officials participating in the cover-up operation, she earned great credit among them all. So she called Ral and explained the whole plan to him. Thanks to her innate talent for influence and presentation skills, she easily persuaded him and asked him to meet us all at the coffee shop. What seemed odd to me was the recognizable change in Ral's attitude toward me. When we first met, before embarking on my journey to Earth, he was so concerned about the results of my psychological evaluation and the indifferent behavior which had possessed me at that time. Something that gave him an unfavorable impression of my irresponsibility and intuition, that it was preposterous and absurd to entrust me with such a delicate task. Not to mention, of course, my lack of scientific background compared to none. In fact, he was in the opposing camp for me, but with Elo's full support and dedication, and being the person in charge of the operation, he pledged to them on his own responsibility that I was their best candidate, if not the only one. I do not know for sure how he managed to convince Ral and the other chiefs, but I would never have seen Earth had it not been for Elo. Ral's negative impression has changed a lot since then. My outstanding performance during training, my problem-solving approaches, and the interpersonal skills I have demonstrated then, my ground experience in the journey, have shaped a paradigm shift in Ral's thoughts about me, turning him into one of my biggest supporters in the government. That was why he went with Elo straight to the headquarters to persuade them after our meeting at the coffee shop. On the other hand, Kay and I had another side errand. We started planning our quick and sudden wedding, making all the necessary arrangements, and preparing for Kay's friends and family to receive that surprise. We went to home stores to buy some essential equipment for our temporary home on Proxima-b, which would eventually be advantageous to us in our permanent one on Earth. By the Earthling calendar, it took Ral and Elo less than 2 days to convince the headquarters officials and prepare the mutual agreement that Kay and I would sign with the government. This agreement was crucial because it defined responsibilities, obligations and duties for each of the signatories. I signed a similar one before my first journey, but this one was a little different, as in addition to including Kay as a mission partner, it did not introduce a return plan. This agreement was just a matter of formality. On the ground, work was already going by leaps and bounds, progressing in full swing. The government immediately proceeded with all measures and preparations for our final enterprise, urging the most brilliant scientists and technologists to find a better, more reliable and safer method for the direct communication demanded between the two planets without being intercepted by the Centaurians. Furthermore, building a spacious two-passenger ship was their next step, for they never discovered those modifications Sam and Lara had made to make my spaceship carry the three of us. The voyage departure was scheduled to kick off within 2 months on the Earthling calendar. That time was considered too tight for the engineers and scientists to wind up the tasks required of them. They had already worked with all their might to fulfill their obligations on time. The real challenge, though, was to test the effectiveness and security of the communication channel between both planets and how buttoned up would be the launch phase after the Centaurians had raised their alertness and vigilance to the maximum. In theory, all the tests passed, and given the time constraints, we could not be sure of their practice efficiency. We had only to hope so. This constricting schedule was to preserve the gains and advantages of precedence after we first arrived on Earth, and we did not want to give our foe a chance to overpower us in this field. Now that we have already proved our entitlement and claimed Earth, it was our destiny and our life purpose to preserve it. If it took Ral and Elo only 2 days to convince the authorities, ironically, it took us a little more convincing Kay's family of our plan and that her decision to go to Earth with me was inevitable and non-negotiable. It turned out that convincing the government was much easier than convincing the parents. We had a quick, traditional Proximal wedding ceremony and got ready to start our new life together. Unlike any other Proximals, save Sam and Lara, we were the only ones who would begin that life somewhere else, on a distant planet, where none but our devotion and love for each other could connect us more. The 2 months, though remarkably squeezed and short, were more than enough for Kay to absorb all the lessons and information needed to put her in the same program I had enrolled in before my first assignment. I had already told her and shared most of the details with her when I did it 2 years ago. That was why the training was much easier for her compared to mine. We had updated simulation software thanks to the information obtained from Earth during my first mission. It was just less exciting for me after experiencing the real adventure, of which the countdown to the second phase had already begun. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6...